Hey there, welcome to another episode in the Philanthropy Mastermind series. It is 2024, and I don't know what it's like where you are, but we are having our first snow day. And so welcome. I know it's been a big stormy season for a lot of us out there in the country as we enter this new year of fundraising and philanthropy. And there are a lot of issues besides weather that inhibit us. We're going to be talking about a lot of those today with our guest, Karen E. Osborne. Karen Osborne is known to many of you. I'm going to give a little brief introduction, just the thumbnail, because you may know her already. But also, if I were to read her bio to you, we wouldn't have any time to talk with her. But I am going to direct you to places where you can learn more about her as well. We'll also put those in the chat. All of that's going to happen in the next few minutes. So first, I just want to welcome you to, of course, this stage where we bring people like Karen to you when they're kind enough to give us their time. We also have the kindness of DonorSearch to thank for that, who's been sponsoring this series back since 2016. So we're so grateful to them for providing us a platform to have these conversations with you. And if you want to learn more about DonorSearch, you won't be hearing about them, I don't think, in our conversation today, but you can learn a lot more about your donors and about DonorSearch over at DonorSearch.net. And that's, again, DonorSearch.net, where over on the resources tab, you'll also see a listing for all the sessions we have coming up and recordings of many of the sessions that we've had before today. So there, you'll also find an episode of the podcast that we did with Karen Osborne not too long ago, which is a great kind of window on some of her work, but also her work as an author, which I'm sure we'll touch on later today at some point. But with that, I just want to welcome you, Karen. Thank you so much for hanging out today. Really appreciate it.
Oh, thank you so much, Jay. It's so nice to see you again. It's so nice to be on Masterminds. I had such a good time the last time we did it. It was so fun.
It was a lot of fun to talk with you there. And but now I can actually, yes, we're actually talking with other people present. So that's fun too. And just so I don't forget it, you also have your own conversation piece, your own podcast. Mm-hmm. So that's where you're talking with our other authors. So for people who are into books like you clearly are, and I attempt to be, in fact, we share some titles on our bookshelves, which is kind of interesting. Can you share where that podcast is just before we get rolling here so people can hear about it?
Yes, so I'm at it's at KarenEosborne.com/blog-1. Or if you just go to KarenEosborne.com and click on the blog. It's a video blog.
Right. Right. And it's definitely something you want to check out if you love books. And I think anybody in this field probably loves the written word because it's one way that we really touch one another And now, of course, today's session, I know what we're supposed to be talking about. It's something you've discussed with a lot of people over the years. And I assume that's because this issue never goes away, and that's stewardship. So before we got started on this, and you and I talked about this recently, you brought this up and you talked about stewardship, not just in the old context of one thing or another thing, like the end of year letters, which I'm still waiting for because this is the only one I've received. All the others were digital receipts, and most of those came a few days late into the new year. But it's beyond that issue. It's still a whole host of things. So you're talking about stewardship, as we said, as an answer to a host of donor, board, volunteer, and staff issues. Before we even get into that, I'm going to invite people who are here in the room, not just to participate in the chat and the Q&A, but maybe just to tell us, if you don't mind, just tell us if you're in one of these roles, if you're a donor, a board member, a volunteer, a staff member. That might be helpful to know where stewardship fits for you. And if you have particular questions about stewardship or just concerns or maybe pet peeves, we want to know. Please make that a part of the conversation today. And oh, wow, thank you all for doing that. Look at this. This is awesome. So just to list a few here. Thank you also for telling us where you're from. We love that. But a staff member, staff, but we've got board members here with us. Obviously, a development director. Thank you so much for hanging out here. We've got major gift officers and all the above. That's my favorite. Thank you, Brianna. Let me see, Jessica at a K-12 school, another director of development operations. This is quite a room we've got to discuss an issue that's a really I don't know, it just drives me crazy, and it clearly does you. So what inspired the idea about talking about this, first of all? What is the thing that really keeps you up at night when it comes to stewardship?
Well, I was listening. I was at a conference, and of the two, is Karen as the donor and Karen as the professional. And so I was at a conference as a professional, and I was listening to speakers talking about, donor retention and how it's still such a problem, and it's probably all COVID's fault, or it's the Gen Z's fault, or it's the, and it was just like all this data, and I just wanted to get up and say, hello, yes, there are trends happening, but that trend doesn't have to be you. That trend doesn't have to be your school. I saw we had somebody here from a K through 12. It doesn't have to be your not-for-profit. I saw we had ED here. This is so fixable, and it's so maddening. And then as a donor, I have the same feeling you had. I'm a generous person. Bob and I, we give more than. We give more than what the government believes. We give a lot of money away. And I can't tell you how little good stewardship I get. As a monthly donor for a long time, I don't get anything. Here's somebody who's loyal, who's stuck with you, who gives you every single month, and all you get is a thank you note.
It's funny. I was talking about this with a friend earlier today about an organization that we started giving to monthly. This was 2 years ago, and I had no connection. They're just an organization that does this tremendous work with the prison industrial complex, and helping people come back into real life. And so I was moved by it and started giving monthly. And at the end of the year, I was still getting dear friend kind of responses, and I thought, and it's not that it's personal, because I was also thinking both in my field, but I was thinking as a donor and wondering, are they doing this to everybody? Because I'm not special. So what are they losing here? What resources are they losing as a result of this?
Yeah. Yep. Too often I find that people think that thank you is stewardship, that getting out a receipt and sending a thank you note. And if we weren't talking about donors, they also think that that's all it takes for, the mission person who helped you, that faculty person, that doctor, that teacher, whoever, program person who helped you, that thank you so much, Jay, that's stewardship, that's all that's what it takes. It's also that people think that it is something that's just for major donors, you know, because you have to all that taking care of them, and they're demanding it, and it's, it's anti-community development, and it's anti so many things, and or they think that it's a nicety that I can't afford right now, because my job is so big and it would take so much time and money. There's
Mhm.
just a lot of misconceptions about what it is, and therefore it doesn't get on. I see someone says it's hard for me to reflect my experiences as a donor,
Mhm.
as I can see the rest of it.
Oh, as what to do and not to do as a professional when I've never experienced a piece of stewardship from any NPO I've
Ah,
ever given to.
and Jay, this is actually a lesson,
Yeah.
because we expect our board members and our volunteers. So I'm a board member, I'm a chair of a board, and I am a serial volunteer. And we expect our volunteers to be able to raise money for us, and thank donors for us when they've never experienced the joy of excellent stewardship. So how am I going to do what you've never given me?
Mhm.
I heard she's spot on. She's
Right.
spot on. The good news is this is all so fixable.
And
This is
and
fixable.
by the way, I didn't even give that thumbnail sketch of your history. So for those who don't know it, you spent almost 2 decades in higher ed development, that kind of that leadership level. Then, of course, with the Osborne Group. So if people don't know the Osborne Group, that's the other part of your life where with that firm, you worked with numerous clients
Every
on a
kind.
variety of different issues, raising very significant sums. But I have a feeling that stewardship for you, both when you're working on that side and when you were working as a consultant, as well as in your donor life, that was a kernel of this whole piece about stewardship. Maybe before we go any further, could you kind of give us a definition of stewardship as you see it, and maybe also how it affects these different things, our lives as donors, as board members, as staff?
Yes. So stewardship is, let me just put a little preface. People want to know that they matter. People want to feel valued, appreciated, but also know that whatever they've done or given or helped with, or that somehow it mattered, somehow it made a difference. I stayed up with you late, colleague, and I helped you, turn this problem around. And your thank you is very nice. I expect thank you. But if you told me, you know what, because you stayed up with me, this is what happened. And I just want to thank you again, because you had an impact. Karen, I wanted to call you and tell you that when you gave me that idea, I actually ran with it. And can I just share with you what has happened as a result of you giving me that idea, right? So where stewardship is about telling me that whatever I contributed as a colleague, as a donor, as a volunteer, as a board member, as a staff member, as a boss, whatever I contributed mattered and made a difference. And this is the difference it made. Now, there's one other part of the definition that's critically important. There's a lot of back stuff. You have to actually record things.
Mhm.
You have to know you know what I mean? You have to do all the recording and know, okay. Then the other piece that misconception is that stewardship is also something you tell people. So you send an impact report, you send a note, but we know that engagement is so central. So let me just give you an example. Um, the whole board, I'm on Easter Seals, Florida's, I'm chair of the board. And we have a small program in Naples, Florida. We have big, big programs all over Florida, but in Naples, we have a one that's just getting going. It's about 3 or 4 years old. We had our board meeting there on site. The staff arranged that clients would teach us what they've been learning. So we had so we met all these folks, and then they had the joy of teaching us what they were doing, and there were little stations. So we made a candle, and we did different things at different stations, and then the staff then talked about the program and how we came here. That is amazing experiential stewardship. It was education as a board member, but it was also, here's the difference you're making. You just spent time with this. Let me just tell you, when he first came here, he wouldn't even speak. He wouldn't even speak. And now he's just taught you how to make a candle. Like, wow. I feel like my money, my time, my ideas are paying off because of that experience. So we want to think about stewardship as not just telling people and mailing impact reports. We're a visual society. It should also be, what if, Jay, just think about this. Think about all the organizations that you give to. And what if they all sent you a 30-second, a 1-minute video of something that was happening on, at the place. Like, Jay, I thought of you, and I want you to see this is what's happening, and thank you again, because you made that happen. And that's the other thing, is that it can't be you helped us make that happen.
Yeah, talk about that a little bit. That difference is seems so small, but it's huge, isn't it?
It's huge. So often we make the organization the hero of the story. You helped us save Johnny. You helped us educate Maria. But no, you did it. This happened because of you. These young people have learned to read because of you and Jack. That's how they learned how to read. And when you make the donor the hero of the story, or the volunteer, or the program person, the person that helped you, we got that grant because of you. You took time to give me all that data and all that information, and you were so patient with me, helping me explain it and everything. And so, Miss Program Director, I just want to say that you just landed a huge grant.
There's the chat's been blowing up all along, which I really love. I want to just say that generally, but we also had a comment from Denise, which is an interesting question, which is, how can you say that they made an impact if they only contributed? It's because of the part, not the whole. And I'm wondering if you can talk about that a little bit, because it could be, I mean, we've heard this argument about, you cited it before, that if we're spending a lot of time talking with each and every donor, or really catering to them, we're not serving the need. And I think you've disproven that, and we all know that. However, it's true that the $25 donor may not see that they're the ones solving this problem. How important is it to make the total focus on that individual donor? And how much is it, and is there an importance in showing that they're part of a collective, of a family that's doing something for others?
Let me give you a great example, and then you'll see. Hopefully it'll answer the question. So this was an organization in England, and they it's one of the largest charities in England, and they help abused children. So they can't even let you see the children. They can't expose you, right? It's all about privacy and stuff. And they have many donors who are like a quid a month donor. So $5 a month, kind of a donor. And they said to me, we can't do this that you're saying. This is not possible, what you're saying. We have so many donors. How am I, and what is this little quid a month actually accomplishing? And I don't get how this works. And you want me to stop sending out at least one direct mail and share an impact without asking for money. Because of course, when you do them together, one negates the other, right? We so thank you and appreciate what you did. Give us more. Boom. So I said, no, what we talked it all through, and here's where they landed. They appointed a woman who'd been working there for 15 years, older woman, and she wrote every donor. And she said, my name is Martha, and I've been here for 15 years, and I'm going to be in touch with you. And I'm going to be letting you know what we're doing with your money and how it's helping people. And then she wrote and she said, and I want you to see, she sent a picture of this like fluffy, sad looking bunny. And she said, and I want to thank you for giving comfort to a child.
And for the people who are still, thinking, well, how does that bring us revenue?
Yeah, stewardship raises more money than anything. Because what do? People repeat joyful experiences. People repeat when they feel like they're having an impact, right. They repeat it. And your best next donor is somebody who already gave. And so if you would just treat me like I matter, if you would just say, dear Jay or dear Mr. Frost instead of dear friend, and then you showed me, here was, they didn't say that my money bought this rabbit. You notice that? They went for impact, not thing.
Right.
I am thanking you for comforting a child. Do I believe that could happen with my $5? Yeah. That feels believable to me, that I comforted a child with what I give and what I'm able to do. So it takes creativity. It takes strategic thinking, and it takes discipline. You have to put a program together.
Right. And support that program consistently, because you can't just do it once and hope. And there are some great comments here from a whole bunch of folks. I want to just point to Jennifer's, because she had talked about at a foster care agency, they had the same issues about discretion and children. That's true for a lot of charities. And she pointed to, as you made this rabbit example, which I think is brilliant because it's not about the child at all. She talked about the possibility in some cases, for example, of using a child's voice, not video, not photographs, just to illustrate the impact on a child. There are lots of things like that. And we had a couple questions come in too. Do you mind if I share those with you now?
Yeah.
Okay. So I know that one that came along was, let me see, about repurposing stories from Kylie, who had said, is it okay to repurpose stories shared from the school's social media as stewardship content to donors?
Yes, of course. And remember, visual and audio are so much more powerful than written.
We also had a question from, let me see, it was from, where is it? Oh, I'm losing these things because they're coming through so many, which I appreciate. Keep them coming. Oh, from Sheila, who had asked, how do you scale? Because this is one of the questions about bringing this discipline to the project. So how do you scale up when you're a multi-program, multi-million-dollar organization? Now, we don't know much of the detail, Sheila, about your situation, how many people are on your development staff, how many people are marketing versus development, if you do have those silos, which many do, what your budget is. There are a lot of things we don't know, but as a general question, mm-hmm. Karen, what do you say?
So scaling up is exactly what we need to do. And if you think about, and this speaks to your comment, Jay, about we don't know how big. So if you just think about a triangle, and depending on your bandwidth, the pieces of the triangle are different sizes. So at the top of this triangle, these are your board members. These are your best volunteers. This is the head of program staff who's so good to you and has given you, so much time. Whoever fits in that, major contributor, and I'm not talking about just money, right? I'm talking about ideas and behaviors. And then the next tier is kind of those who are getting close and rising up, and the bottom tier is everybody else. And you decide, depending on bandwidth, you decide how many names can fill each of those bands, right? And then you think, okay, now what am I going to do for each of these bands? At the top, it's going to be very personal. It's going to be what Karen and Bob, Easter Seals, Florida, it's them saying to me as the chair of the board, and I actually had board members do it for board members. The staff helped us put it together, but then each of us on this little committee, we called donors and board members and said, I want to thank you. This idea propelled us. And this, when you showed up and walked around and said hello to everybody at the event. And, so we had very personalized, including their gift dollars. In the middle, it was a more broad, it was, people that give at this level, your team helped us, it's a more broad, but it's still impact. And the question about having so many programs, that means you're not finding out which of your programs your donors care about. Mm-hmm. You're not finding out. If the problem is, I don't know how to thank you because we have so many programs, the answer is, you should know what floats my boat. And down here, then it's just generalized. At the bottom, it's the rabbit. It's down here, it's a broader, this person who helped you one time, this person. Now, I also think that when I was frequent flying, I was an American Airlines. That was my airline. And I had gotten to December, and I had a ticket and a trip that was going to get me to the next level of frequent flyerism. And there was a snowstorm. It was December. It was a snowstorm. I lived in New York. So I called and told them that the flight had been canceled, that I was one ticket away, that I purchased the ticket, that you're giving me credit for the ticket, for my next flight. And I'm assuming that I'm getting bumped up. No, I'm sorry. The rules are the rules. I said, can I speak to your supervisor? Supervisor, I'm sorry. The rules are the rules. Meanwhile, Delta Airlines contacted me. And they said, we noticed that lately you've been flying us more frequently. And we just want to recognize that increased business. So even though you've not earned, we just are going to give you our silver, our first level and we can't wait for you to fly with us again. Dumped American, went to Delta. Been a Delta girl ever since, So when you just, it's about treating people and making people feel seen and appreciated, and you can repurpose. Maybe you have a little video, and for Jay, you ask if you can come and take him to lunch, and you have it on your tablet, and you say, can I just show you this? Thank you so much for being here. And then for somebody else, it's a phone call and go to the website, or I emailed it to you, or I sent it to you. And for everybody else, it's, I hope you've been visiting our website because there's so many good things there to let us know how much we appreciate you. You might be interested in, it's not, and the reason it's worth it, you get more planned gifts. Loyal donors leave us in their will, that more than almost any other people. People who are helping you on the staff, they feel like, I just saw a study that said that telling for-profits how important it is to make your team feel like they're doing something purposeful. We don't have to make believe we're doing something purposeful. So we just have to let people know that contribution moved the mission. That contribution of idea, of time, of talent, And I guess, and the last thing I would just say, I think I've been saying it, but I just want to capsulize it. Steward the whole person. I'm not just money. I'm not just a contact list. I'm a whole person with ideas, and I know you have pain in the neck board members. I know that, who push, who try to take over, who are missing in action. But I think when you start doing this with purpose, intentionally, you're going to see those numbers decrease, right? The pain in the necks will be few. Some people you can't help them. That's just who they are.
Well, I
But for the
wonder
most
if you're really committed and intentional like that, do you think there's a natural tendency then to attract more people who like to be in that environment where they are the generous
absolutely,
spirits getting together to do the same
yeah,
good work?
because they're putting it on Facebook,
Right.
they're
They're
putting
sharing.
it on LinkedIn,
So
they're
instead of
telling
needing to say, "Will you put it on Facebook?" they're just doing it because they're
they're feeling
believers.
good. They're
Yeah.
feeling good.
You said something else earlier, and I think you just echoed it there. You gave these examples of talking to the many and making sure that they felt seen, whether it's with a fuzzy rabbit or whatever it is, and saying, I'm going to reach out to you, whether it's the board member talking to a board member. But you also said something else, and you said this to me earlier in a different context about making sure that, maybe the boss feels seen, which is a funny concept, right? But can you talk about that a little bit? Because I've seen a tendency for people to, even when we have relatively flat organizations, or, we can go and talk with board members and all that, we're all comfortable with each other. That doesn't mean that people feel comfortable thanking people who are supposedly, in charge, but they're working hard too, whether they're board members, bosses, our immediate supervisor. Those people are working and they don't always get a slap on the back either.
They
Is that
probably get the least slaps in the back.
right?
They get a paycheck. They're working flat out. They're giving so much for somebody. So when I was a VP, VP of advancement at Trinity College a zillion years ago, one of the head of the annual fund came in and knocked on my door. So she's 2 rungs below, but she waited till after hours, and she came in and she said, "May I share something with you? I know you're really busy. Could you give me a few minutes? I just want to share something with you." And I said, "Sure, absolutely. What's up?" I'm thinking, problem, problem, problem. Why aren't you talking to your boss? Why are you coming to me? But I smiled and I said, "Of course." And she said, "I just want to tell you that you inspired me so much. And when I used to come here, it was a job. And now I feel like I'm part of a profession. And I just wanted to say thank you." Well, boom, that took like 1 minute. And it made me feel seen and appreciated. And she and I are friends to this day. We still are in contact. Her career has taken off. I was talking to a colleague who I'd hired years ago, and we were just, like twice a year, we catch up. And he said, "Karen, before I hang up, I just want to tell you that I still tell Karen stories. I still take the wisdom that you gave me and I am still sharing it with my team. And anyway, I just wanted you to know that. How can you not feel terrific?" And I'll give you one other quick phone call one. So this is a volunteer. I'm a volunteer. It's Christmas. I've got tons of stuff in the back trunk. I have 30 people coming for dinner, Christmas Eve. I am stressed to the max. The phone rings, and I see on photo ID that it's the CEO of National Easter Seals, the then CEO. So I thought, oh, okay. So, "Hey, Jim, what's up?" In my "I'm too busy to talk to you" voice. And he said, "Karen, I can tell you're really busy. And I really just wanted you to know I was sitting at my desk and I was just thinking about you. And I was thinking about, while I was writing Christmas cards and holiday cards, how much you have contributed and how much you've changed us for the better. And I just wanted to tell you, I just want to wish you a happy holiday." And, "Well, how are you, Jim?" How's it going? Tell me about. I knew the director of development gave him a list. I knew I was on a list. I know she gave him little stickies. It didn't. That's the power of stewardship. It doesn't invalidate that I knew that somebody told him to do it. Didn't make it feel any less amazing. So when we think about stewarding a boss, stewarding the chair of the board, oh, they know everything. The board knows everything. We keep them up to date, but not if you don't tell me, Karen. You know,
Yeah.
you need to tell me. And it doesn't matter that I know it's part of a. I had a donor once whip a letter out of his pocket. We were at a cocktail party, and he says, "Karen, can I just show you this?" And he pulls this letter out, and he opens it up, and it's a beautiful, beautiful letter from the swim coach, telling him how she's teaching leadership on the swim team because his daughter. That's what he cared about. And he says, "Do you ever look at this?" Had I not read that letter 10 times before I let it go? Yes, I had read the letter 10 times before, but I just said, oh, I'm so glad. He was like the inside volunteer. He was the chair of the campaign. He knew stewardship. And here he was excited that the coach wrote him a letter.
It
It's
strikes
so
me that it doesn't
easy.
take much time to do these things because, and maybe it was my imagination, but when you were telling the story about that first of those stories that of the person thanking you, that team member coming into you, it looks like you still feel it when you
I
tell
do.
us.
And look how many years it is,
Yeah.
This is when I was a VP, and then I had another, decades of being a consultant, and
And it's still there with you.
it's still there. Yeah.
Elizabeth had said earlier in the chat that they've worked on increasing their stewardship efforts, but they don't hear much back from their donors. And so, as she says, I want to balance sharing impact and appreciation, but not bothering them. And is there a way to decide when to move on or reduce communication? Could you talk a little bit about whether or not the responses we get, like whatever you happen to say in those instances where people thanked you, how relevant that is to still undertaking that mission of showing people that they are seen and they are loved?
It's anybody who tells you they don't need it it's not true that they won't be moved by it. Anyone who says, I don't need all this communication, I don't, you know, they don't know. We know the word stewardship. All they know, just like my campaign chair who knew everything, what he experienced was a coach writing him a letter. That didn't sound to him like stewardship from the advancement office. That felt really personal. So, number one, know that stewardship works for everybody. It works for everybody, even the person who says, I don't need anything, even the person who's the most knowledgeable. The second thing is doing a trust and appreciation survey it'll give you so much information. It's an easy thing to do. If you go to the Osborne Group's website, and we're just theosbornegroup.com, there are free resources, and one of the resources that is powerful is a trust and stewardship survey where you are, all you have to do, you can do it electronically for the masses. You can do it on a Zoom for your middle. You can do it in person for the top. And you're finding out, like one of the questions would be, you're so generous, and I know that you give to lots and lots of places. Does anybody really do a great job? Who does a great job helping you feel connected to the mission and appreciated for your, what did they do? Where do we fit? In that. And you don't ever use the word stewardship because that's just us. That's our jargon. You know, do you believe you're making an impact? I remember asking a board member, and I said, He was a $250,000 donor, Jay. And I asked him if he believed his gift made a difference. And he said, I hope so. I hope so.
Hmm.
And then I asked him, is there any organization that you know for sure that you're making a difference? And his face lit up. And he told me about the food bank and how he helps feed the poor. And his face, he was like, and I said, and do you give the same amount? And he said, no. He said, I don't. You've got me thinking.
And I wonder what's preventing him from making that commitment to the food bank when it obviously gives him so much.
They probably didn't ask him.
Yeah.
So many of our organizations undersell, they don't think big, they don't ask. And that's from a volunteer perspective too. If you make me feel wonderful as a volunteer, then you ask me to do something big. I had no intention of being chair of the board. I saw how my husband works as chair of the board. It's so much work. I'm so busy in my life. But somebody asked me and said, you're the one, you're who we need. You're who, and if you can give people reasons, not we asked 5 other people and they all said no. And so we thought maybe you would.
Oh my. Now, I know one thing we talked about before we began today, and now I haven't let you have much time to talk about it, is the relationship between all these things that we're talking about, the lifeblood of this work in stewardship, but also how that relates to strategy. And can you talk about that a little bit? Because I know that's one of the other things that you kind of talk about as being the thing that keeps you not up at night, but that you keep thinking about. How do those
Yeah.
things relate? Why, and how do we make sure that strategy always has a place for this piece, stewardship, as being central to
Yes. And it needs to, and actually it's missing in so many other parts.
it?
It's missing in all of our donor engagement. It's missing in because we're so focused on the tactical, we're so focused on immediate, and what we don't have. But when you step back and you think further out, where is this to take me? What am I trying to do here? I know what I'm trying to do. I am going to turn my donor retention numbers on their head. Right now, we're at 34%, for new donors, and we're at, 52% for donors of, 4 years, and we're at blank percent for 5 more. And I am going to change those numbers by year 3. By year 3, we're going to be a model in donor retention. So this year, therefore, and then what do we have to do in our stewardship program? What do we have to do? Because remember, we talked about engagement. How do I make it engaging, not just reporting, right? And you can take baby steps. Take baby steps. If reporting is all you can get out in the beginning, then get that out. But then year 2, say we're going to have videos, and videos are free now. You just everybody's phone. You don't need to spend a whole lot of money on videos. We're going to have videos. We're going to have engagement opportunities by year 3 that are tied to, and it's not just inviting people to a luncheon and and sitting them next to a person. You need immersive. There's a wonderful book that the Heath brothers, Chip and what is Chip's other brother's name? Heath, Heath. They wrote moments. They wrote about the power of moments, the power of moments.
Hmm.
And read it.
Yeah, thank you.
It's about how you can be strategic about each step of the way, of each interaction. People they remember high points, low points, and endings. So what's going to be the high point of this conversation? What's going to be, because we don't want any low points, and what's going to be, how am I going to end? How are we going to wrap it up so that it's, it's like writing a novel. The only difference is that people remember the beginning too with books. right? And then they remember the high points, and then they remember how the book ended, to be able to talk about it. So anyway, The Power of Moments. I highly recommend it, by the Heath brothers, and I just can't remember Chip's brother's name.
We'll
Not that
have
I
to
know
look
them.
at
I
that.
don't know
Well, that
them.
also reminds me that, and Jack, Jack is our producer, and so Jack, Dan Heath, thank you for that, Kim and Melissa. If you find a link to that, Jack, feel free to, Jack, put that in the chat. But also, since we're talking about authors, I don't want to cut you off in strategy, but I have to point out the books in back of you, because you have a new one. So, and if anybody says this is commercial endorsement or something, no, it's not. I mean, these are novels. Although, I have to say, I mean, Karen, I'm sure that your work thinking about all this stuff, thinking about, like you just said, the architecture of a novel, right? You're thinking about high points, low points. I mean, we diagram that out when we learn how to write. But the idea that of knowing a person's character, and you and I have talked about that separately, about the character and where might the character go, is something that I'm sure you experienced in your whole kind of fundraising professional life. Now it's invested in your books. I would think there must be a lesson that for us somewhere, that if we just learn to think about people the same way we get interested in
And
characters in the book,
again, this is the strategic
right,
thinking. Where is this character going? Where is this donor going? Where is this volunteer going? What is it that my boss needs? What are my boss's worries? What are my boss's pressure points? What are my boss's strengths? And so that I can be supportive, and then I can let her know that the thing she's working on the hardest, I noticed it, even if it was for somebody down the hall.
right.
It's really important. So my latest book is True Grace. Jay says it's not commercial, but it is. I'm sharing. I am sharing. This is
Okay,
product
but no
placement,
complaints about
people.
this. This is, yes, True Grace. And this is out on who? On which publisher? I'm sorry.
My publisher is Black Rose Writing, and it's available everywhere. Barnes and Noble, Amazon.
Right.
It's got tons of wonderful reviews inside. It's doing really well. And then you can see all my other books when you just check it out.
Right. And hopefully, if we see you at a conference somewhere on this other part of your life, we can get you to sign a copy. But that's a separate thing. So as I'm putting all this together in my mind, and I realize we're talking about big things that people have to both compartmentalize, they have to strategize, compartmentalize, and then implement. If you were offering people like the one big lesson in all this, so that they can go to their colleagues, to the people who are already feeling overworked, to the budget colleagues who are saying, we just don't have enough money to write a note to everybody who gives $1, to their boss who says, but we the other 15 things to do, to the board member who says, I can only see so many people a year. What is the way that we can just give them the lesson in a way they can understand that this is both the right thing to do, and it's also the most lucrative thing to do?
The most lucrative thing to do. So the easiest way is to model the behavior that you're seeking, right? Go and steward your boss. Go and steward a donor. I also, I had board members try it with another board member. Just ask them to just have this. I gave them a little script and said, don't read it, and they came back and they said, oh my goodness, that was like the best conversation. This is the one who actually was delivering the stewardship. That's what's so wonderful about it. Both people get stewarded, because the board member who's saying, Jay, I just want to tell you how amazing you are, and he kind of that feeling like, Jay feels great, but she feels great too. So do it. Look who your champions on your board, the champions on your board who would just hear. Start small. One other big tip that I'll give you, I love grids. So just picture a grid. And as you think about different ideas that you might be able to do, as we've been talking, oh, that's the other thing that you can get. We have a whole list of just ideas. It's a list of stewardship ways that you can steward, and you can just pick what works. Okay, so as you look at this grid, Up here is impact. And down here, so the first line is impact. And then this way is ease of application. So things that are harder to do, but would have a huge impact, what you need is a plan, right? I'm going to get to that by next year. This is how I'm going to get there. Things that are high impact and easier to do, act, do it. Down here, things that are easy to do, but I don't know if the impact would be that big, either rev it up or kick it out. And the things over here that are hard to do and low impact, don't even think about it. And once you start like putting your ideas into the grid, now you know exactly what you can, and actually, had a board do this exercise as well. What would be easy for you to do as a board member? What would be hard? What impact do you think that? And they all at their tables mapped it out, and somebody wrote it on the, and then we brought them all back, and that's I got them to actually try. Because they decided, because they figured out that this was a doable thing.
Karen, someone did ask a couple things. First of all, if they can get an example of that chart somewhere. I don't know if you've done that exercise in a group, that it's posted somewhere, and if not,
I'll just send it to you.
Oh, okay.
If I send it to you, could you post it somewhere? What's the best way?
Yes. Well, so everybody, we will be sending you, if you haven't been to these sessions before, you'll be receiving a letter afterwards with a link to this recording so you can share it with colleagues, which I hope you'll do, because stewardship is something we all have to do together. So Karen, if you'll share that link with me, we'll include that with the email. So thank you very much for that. We also have had a couple of requests for the link to the Osborne Group, which is the firm that bears your name. And in fact, Jack just posted that in the chat, so you can all take a look at that. And if you don't have it from before, we'll make sure that you also have a link to your work as a writer. And I want to encourage people to take a look at that, as well as to hear the podcast episode that where I had the opportunity to talk with you about some of your writing, as well as your work in this profession. We really appreciate that. It strikes me that you and I both knew Jerry Panis in the past. You knew him longer and did a great deal of work with him. He used to give this example, but I think he was borrowing it from history, and the version that I loved comes from Maya Angelou. And someone else referenced it here, which is this quote that I've learned that people will forget what you said, people will forget what you did, but they will never forget how you made them feel. You've been talking about that lesson throughout this whole thing. And you always make all of us feel really wonderful, Karen. So thank you so much for sharing today.
So fun.
Really, really do appreciate you for all you do, as well as for sharing here. Hopefully we'll have a conversation like this again soon. But in the meantime, I want to thank everybody for being here with us and taking the opportunity to listen and learn from Karen. And I want to encourage you all to join us again. We'll have another session, of course, on Thursday, and we're dropping an episode of the podcast, which you'll definitely want to hear from the founder of DC Central Kitchen and one of the board members of World Central Kitchen, that's dropping tonight. So very interesting stuff. So all of that is available to you over at DonorSearch.net under the resources tab. Until then, take care of yourselves out there in the snow and beyond. Thank you. Thanks, Karen.
Bye, everybody. Thank you. Happy New Year.
Happy